Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Kimsey Athletic Center and the home of the Kenna Hall of Army Sports. We're proud to welcome you with great excitement as we have you here today as we induct the 13th class into the Army Sports Hall of Fame. Amazing to have all these former cadet athletes who have accomplished such great things in this same room for what's going to be a very special night and a very special weekend. Before we begin, I'd like to go over the schedule for today's events here in the Kenna Hall of Army Sports. After each of the inductees and the representatives speak, we'll unveil the plaques for the members of the class of 2016. During that time, we'll begin to transport family and guests to Eisenhower Hall for the banquet. We ask that only if the official party remain for the photo session. Each inductee will be sent a CD in the coming weeks of a sampling of pictures taken from the photo session. Family and friends, of course, welcome back tomorrow to take pictures here inside the Kenna Hall of Army Sports. We'd like to thank everyone for coming out this time. We'd like to recognize dignitaries with us here this afternoon, the 59th Superintendent of the United States Military Academy, Lieutenant General Robert Caslin, and his wife, Shelley. And with us, Director of Intercollegiate Athletics, Mr. Boo Corrigan, and his wife, Kristen. And welcome all our distinguished visitors, family members with us here on this special night. With that said, I'd like to welcome to the lectern Director of Athletics, Boo Corrigan.
It's always a little bit goofy because I don't quite know where to stand, and I don't want to stand in front of everyone here, so stay there. Welcome, everyone. It's great to have you here. To our inductees, congratulations. Thank you for being here. Thank you for what you've done. Thank you for those people that you represent in being here. This is one of the great weeks that I have. One of my favorite days at West Point is when I get the chance to call the inductees. And I go in Rosemary in my office, she'll shut the door, and I'll go in there and I'll sit down and I'll start calling people. And a lot of times, so I called Ken Johnson. It took him a while to call me back. I think he thought I wanted money at that point. So I didn't quite know how to do that. And then I called and I talked to Ernie Remus and said, you know, your father has been inducted. And he said, that's great. That's awesome. I said, you need to keep it quiet. And within 30 seconds, he sent an email to 1,000 people. So I wasn't quite sure. I wasn't quite sure what was going on there. And then when I called Tony Clay, it took a couple times for us to connect. And you answered the phone, and I heard Tony on the other end. He goes, "It's not official till I talk to you." you know, but again, it was a wonderful thing to be able to do that. And Colleen is a nurse at the ICU, and she just told me that every time I called her, she was on the floor. So she's like ducking in and out. Oh, he'll be fine. Don't worry. You know, in and out, in that type of thing. But it's a great thrill to have everyone here. As I talked to the inductees earlier, it's about West Point's so much about people, and it's so much about the people that want to share a moment with you. And that, as we talked about before, this is the group that you get to share this with. And that's what makes it so special, is the people. And that's what West Point's about. So to everyone here, congratulations. To everyone in the audience, thank you for being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Boo. At this time, we'd like to ask each inductee to come up to the lectern individually for a few words. We start with someone who mentored 10 All-Americans while coaching the Army wrestling program for some 24 years. Leroy Allen Allitz, represented by his daughter, Mrs. Diane Dranoski.
Thank you. The Leroy Allitz family, including my mother, Verda Allitz, wants to thank you and for this honor. We are thrilled and honored to represent my father in receiving this award at the induction into the Army Sports Hall of Fame. And on behalf of our father, grandfather, and great-grandfather, Leroy Allen Allitz, we would like to thank West Point Superintendent Lieutenant General Robert Caslin, Army West Point Director of Intercollegiate Athletics, Bob Corrigan, Executive Athletic Director, Bob Beretta, the Hall of Fame Selection Committee, and the West Point Athletic Committee, for selecting Leroy for this tremendous honor. My mother knows about this award, and unfortunately, she could not come today because she's suffering from poor health, but she knows about the ceremony, and she's sending her good wishes. I am Leroy and Verda's only daughter. I do have 4 strapping athletic brothers that convinced me that I needed to be the one to speak because I am my father's favorite child. There was logic to that. I agreed. I am my father's favorite child. So here I am. Dad would have been in his glory at this event. He would have started with a bad joke. He always told bad jokes, no matter where he was, funerals, retirements, whatever. And the funny thing is, everybody would always laugh. They just thought it was hysterical, his bad jokes. And I think part of it was they were amazed that he was not embarrassed at all to get up in front of wherever he was to tell those jokes. And that made it all the funnier. My father loved West Point. He loved his God, his family, West Point, and wrestling, and sports in that order. He knew the importance of teaching young men and women the qualities of leadership, duty, responsibility, determination, and guts. He felt privileged every day to be able to work with such talented and special young men and women. My father was not only a coach, but he was also a teacher in the Department of Physical Education. And he taught and worked with thousands of cadets throughout his time at West Point. To him, the motto, duty, honor, and country, was a way of life. He could not imagine ever living any other way than the West Point way. He did coach many notable cadets and future leaders, but he came to know that his wrestlers were not only training and preparing for wrestling competitions, but they were preparing for a life of leadership and commitment to their country, and he knew that. And so wrestling didn't become as important as the cadets who went through his wrestling room and went through all of his classes. I do want to recognize my family who's here today. As I mentioned, my brothers, Douglas Olitz, USMA class of 1964, and his wife Maggie. My other brother, Kurt, who I think most of you know, and his wife Debbie, and daughter Emma. And Kurt was USMA class of 1976. 78, okay. This is how much we're in awe of Kurt. Not, you know. Sorry, Kurt. And, I know. My other brother, Jeffrey, and his wife, Katie, and their son, Henry, and my husband, Bill, and Keegan, and Nick, and and Keegan's boyfriend, Tim, and we have my dad's grandson, Scott, and his wife, Mary, here, and their daughter, Sarah, and son, John, and and my father's grandson, Scott Olitz, and his wife, Mary. Did I say that? I may have said that, sorry. Yeah, okay. There's only 2 other things that I want to say, and I will leave. And they are, you done good, Dad, and go Army, beat Navy.
Well said. Just a reminder, we have a great kiosk of memorabilia from this induction class to, I guess, stage right, maybe your left at the end. It's a great just time capsule of some great things from all of these amazing inductees. Up next, from the class of 1955, a 4-year letter winner on the football team, a first-team All-American in 1954, and the first Army running back to rush for 1,000 yards in a season. Thomas James Bell, represented by his son, Tommy Bell.
Boy, what an honor it is to be here. It's an honor that we didn't know would ever happen. My dad was a very, very humble man. And just like a lot of people that attended West Point, he had a love for this place, a special love. And he didn't talk about his accomplishments on the field very often, but one thing that he did say to us when we were growing up, I was the oldest of 4. My brother's here in attendance. He's the 3rd brother. We've got a brother out in California and a sister back in Cincinnati. But one of the things that he did talk about, and the irony of that, was when he was a little boy growing up in the Bronx, the product of Irish immigrant parents that came over in 1930, was that he used to play over in Pelham Bay and pretend to be Blanchard and Davis. And who'd have thunk that many years later that he'd have an opportunity to come to a great place. And my Nana, my little Irish grandmother, who was 4'11", when my dad got the call to be able to come here and the commission, she said, only in America could this happen. And they were awed by the whole process. And so my dad being a person not one to talk much about it, I learned more about my father from my grandmother. And so as I learned more and more about my father, most kids growing up have a sports hero. There was no sports hero for me. There weren't any NFL players, any college players. There was only one sports hero. And I know I can speak for my brothers and my sister, and that was my dad. My dad was my sports hero and still is my sports hero. He's a man with integrity. He's a man that taught us many, many things. He's a man that taught us how to tuck our shirts in the military way. And we still do that, and I've passed that on to my son. We're eternally grateful for the honor. We thank West Point. We thank the committee. We thank the athletic department. We thank Coach Red Blake for giving my dad a second chance. My dad got turned out in his yearling year in calculus, and that was when the cheating scandal hit in 1951. And you talk about men that had to come together to bring back the fame and the prestige of Army football. And these men like Bob Meshach, Don Hollader, Ralph Chesnoskis, and I could go on and on. These men brought honor back to Army football in 1953 by winning the Commander-in-Chief's trophy after 2 years of the cheating scandal hitting. So my dad got called into Coach Blake's office, and he was quaking in his boots, and he knew that he had turned out and had flunked calculus. And Coach Blake said to him, "Tommy, do you want to graduate from West Point?" And my dad said, "It's my dream, Coach." And he goes, "You need to go home and come back in 3 weeks. You'll wear a tab on your collar. You'll repeat your plebe year." Thus, he's the 4-year letter winner. So it's a part of a group of guys very unique to rebuild the prestige of Army football. And we're, as a family, just in awe of this whole ceremony. We're in awe of all of these inductees today. And we want to thank all of you from the bottom of our hearts and the Academy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tommy. Next, we have another star on the gridiron. He was the Army team captain in 1966, one of the top linebackers in Academy history, as well as a 2-year member of the basketball team. From the class of 1967, Townsend Sutherland Clark.
The further I've gotten away from Army football, the better I've gotten. The reason I say that, I have 4 daughters, and I'm glad they're here tonight. I'm an older parent, and I'm always telling them how proud I was to play for Army, and then I've embellished some of the stories. Unfortunately, they're able to go to the internet and see the real story, and on occasion they've hit me point blank with that. One time they said, "Dad, you said you beat Navy 3 years in a row, but you tied your junior year." I'm very honored to receive this award. I have some thank yous. The Hall of Fame Honor Committee, I'm very grateful to you. My teammates at 2 levels. At the first level, for the support they gave me 50 years ago, that's a half century on the football field. and more importantly, the support they gave me recently for this Hall of Fame nomination and selection. I am deeply grateful to them. You're only as good as those around you. I'd like to give voice to 3 names that are very important to me: Barry Nickerson, Mike Newman, and Tommy Dyer. Some other thank yous: my late high school coach, John Topa, Coach Dale Hall, USMA class of 1945, his classmate, James C. Hamilton, his wife, Gloria, and the entire Hamilton family. Jay Riffenberry, USMA class of 1980, his father, Dr. Riffenberry, his uncle, Townsend Riffenberry, his mom and sister, and the entire Riffenberry clan. I'm very appreciative for the support you gave me. Coach Paul Dietzel, Coach Tom Cahill, Coach Bobby Knight. Special mention to Coach George Terry, who served under Coach Paul Dietzel as special assistant and head coach. Specific mention to Bill Rao, USMA class of 1959 and member of the 1958 football team. He taught me the fundamentals of playing the linebacker position. It made my transition from high school to college very quick, and the things he taught me stayed with me throughout my career. Finally, I'd like to thank my brother, George. He and I grew up together, I in his rough and tumble world of football, basketball, baseball, whatever it was. I think many of the things that you do here and come here and you're prepared while you're growing up during the formative years in high school and junior high, and he was the guy that set the pace for me and helped me greatly. So I'd like to give voice to all those names. I'm very grateful for this. I'm honored to receive this award. I thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, a swimmer who helped Army to 3-star victories over Navy and who won 4 All-America certificates. From the class of 1965, Anthony Hugh Clay, represented by his wife, Mrs. Calla Clay.
I truly want to. I truly appreciate the Army Sports Hall of Fame's recognition of my husband, Tony Clay's swimming achievements and his induction into the Army Sports Hall of Fame. This distinguished nomination was an extraordinary honor for Tony. He felt great pride in being noted with the other outstanding athletes that are part of the Hall of Fame. Tony always recalled his fond memories of his participation with his teammates in the swimming competitions. He had great respect for Coach Ryan and the support of his teammates, Buca, Bliss, Merges, Landgraf, Schallenbrand, O'Hara, Trainer, and many other fellow swimmers. He never forgot their happy times and the beating Navy celebrations. After graduation, Tony followed their accomplishments with great admiration. Often, Tony expressed his appreciation for his training at West Point, which was marked with history, respect, and lasting friendships. Since we lived in New York City, Tony and I frequently attended swimming meets, football games, reunions, and enjoyed the beauty of the academy. Tony's deep feelings for West Point were rooted in his life. Once again, I want to thank you on behalf of Tony for this wonderful honor.
Thank you, Mrs. Clay. Next up, from the class of 1991, another swimmer who was an 11-time All-America selection in 3 seasons in the pool, Colleen Ann Crisillo.
Good evening, and I just want to say I'm honored and humbled to be nominated and selected into the Army Sports Hall of Fame. It's truly listening to these stories an accomplishment that I never thought I would achieve, and I look forward to hearing the remaining stories. Swimming is a sport where there's a lot of emphasis on the individual athlete, and yet at the same time, we are a team and we work together as a team. And as most people who have achieved success, I understand that a lot of what my successes came because I had the support of so many team members and other people that I could not even begin to thank. But I'm going to try very quickly. I want to thank, first of all, my mother, who supported me prior to coming to West Point, and then when I came to West Point, drove to almost every home swim meet we had, came to many away swim meets, and also traveled several states, flew to follow me wherever I went for my swimming. I also want to thank Coach Ryan, no longer with us, but I will still thank him, and Coach Bossy for recognizing my potential prior to coming to West Point, and also to Coach Bossy for nominating me for the Army Sports Hall of Fame. I truly appreciate it. And finally, I want to thank my teammates and my company mates, because no success comes on an individual alone. And I know a lot of times there were sacrifices that were made on behalf of others in order so that I could achieve, and I truly appreciate that. Again, I thank West Point and the Army Hall Sports of Fame for nominating me and selecting me. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, a tremendous performer in track and field, a member of a pair of relay teams that claimed titles at the Penn Relays, and a 4-time individual heptagonal champion from the class of 1949, John Asa Hammock, represented by his son, Mr. John Hammock.
Well, on behalf of my mom and my brother that are in attendance here today, I just really want to say thank you. I'm not going to name, my dad would hold me back on the time here, so I'm not going to name all the dignitaries here in thanking him. But interestingly enough, that a week ago, last Friday, would have been my father's 90th birthday. And without a shadow of a doubt, this would have been the greatest birthday present that my father would have ever received. And so I just want to make sure that all of you and the participants and the people that are watching this really know about the love that my father had, not only for the academy, but on the track. And for a young boy that was raised by a widower from Hollandale, Mississippi, and that actually played football as his freshman year at Mississippi State, to end up getting an appointment and coming to West Point, the truth has to be known that his plebe year, when he showed up on the football field, he was playing on the defense, and Doc Blanchard came through the line. My father saw the hole, dumped in there, braced himself, wrapped his arms around Doc Blanchard, and Doc knocked my father right out of the football field onto the track. And that is, I promise you, a true story. He locked off the field after that hit and never returned. And if you think about this, what's so amazing is this young man from Hollandale, Mississippi, is that, he was never known as a track runner in high school. And so to go, he would be if he was here, he would tell you stories about the coach and what that coach did for him and raised him to a level. Dad actually got third in the Olympic trials in the 400 meters his last year. But his greatest story that I have to share with you is that he was referring to his Penn Relays victory. So as Dad was warming up on the backstretch, there was a father and a young son, Fan, that kept pointing to Dad and finally waved him over, handed over the program over the barrier there, and said, "Could I get your autograph?" And my father was just flabbergasted, like who knew who he was and why they would want his autograph. So my dad signs the program and hands it back to him and says, "Thank you, sir," as every West Point grad would say sir to anybody that he spoke to. And the man looked at it and said, "You're not Glenn Davis." And so anyway, that was my father's favorite track story, I can assure you. So with that, if Dad was here, I promise you, if any of you out in the audience know him, he would make a call to action. And so for all you grads and the grads-to-be that might be watching this, Dad would say, when it comes time to stewardship, please remember the AOG. And I hope that you will find in your heart and your ability to sometimes give back to this institution that gave so much to Dad. And lastly, I think Dad would submit that he would say that the single working moms of today should be held in the same place that the widows that were referred to back in the Old Testament. And I hope you can find a place to look to help support single working moms like his mother was. So thank you so much. My family is eternally grateful to be named for this. Thank you.
Next, from the class of 1969, an All-America choice on the gridiron, 3-year letter winner, and a local product. From Newburgh, Lester Kenneth Johnson, Jr.
That Lester thing may cause some of you to lose your security clearance because everybody doesn't know that, okay? It's L. Kenneth, Ken. I'm going to be speaking to the big you folks as a subset of a bigger group later on today, so hopefully it's not too terribly redundant. But this award is the most humbling thing that I'll ever be involved with in my life. Not the best thing, my family is the best thing, but the most humbling thing. And I'd like to point out in what's here before us today. I have a bunch of classmates who will be at dinner later on, but I have the good fortune to be here at the same time that one young Mr. Townsend Clark is here, in whose footsteps I followed. Not directly behind, because there was a pretty special guy by the name of Jim Bevins in between me and Townsend Clark. But there was a point in time in the history of Army football, sometime a bit after probably the most famous coach that's ever coached here, whose name you've heard on several occasions, and another coach who many of you who have met and have heard numerous times, Coach Youngs. Those two guys represented a great deal of what was fantastic about West Point and West Point's football team. But this period of time that I was a part of, that I'm incredibly humbled and proud to be a part of, disappeared a little bit over the course of time through no fault of anybody's. No whining, no anything. But the guys that are here from 66 and 67 and 68 and 69 and 70, we went through a period of time where I have to tell you that no group of people have ever taken more pride in the plaudits of West Point and the plaudits of Army football than we did. And I'm incredibly proud to be just a small part of that. And this is entitled as I feel that my name is associated with this, and I gladly accept it. I'd like to describe myself as, only because he's a little bit older than I am, and oh, by the way, I'm the second youngest person on this day. Thank you, Jerry. The notion of this thing being a team sport, I like to consider myself the poster boy for that group of guys during the late 60s, early 70s, who I believe not just militarily, but athletically delivered the goods. And I will forever, with or without this award, but this award has given me a little bit of a platform. With or without this award, I am incredibly proud to be just a small cog in that incredible wheel. And I was so delighted to hear about Coach Allitz, because Coach Allitz is a part of that family. I wrestled as a plebe, and I didn't have the good fortune, because plebes couldn't wrestle varsity back then. I didn't have the good fortune to wrestle for him, but I wrestled in his organization. And Coach Allitz would have fit right inside that Tom Cahill organization. And for that, I thank everybody who played some small role in Ken Johnson's selection. And I'm truly, truly humbled by any and all considerations to be a part of that. And so thank you all very, very much.
Next, one of the great golfers in Army history, the first in Academy history to be named an All-American and a three-time NCAA qualifier. From the class of 1964, Stephen Bradley Pembroke.
Don't know where to start the thanks. Just thank you, everybody, from the superintendent, selection committee, and all of you that are here to help us celebrate this really wonderful occasion. It's a moment I will never forget as long as I live. I feel very proud, very humbled to have been the first golfer selected for the Sports Hall of Fame. I got to spend a lot of time with Coach Brian Watts and his team the last couple of days, and I can assure you I might be the first, but I won't be the last. You're going to see some other golfers in the Hall of Fame. Brian Watts is doing a great job with the team. I wish I could share this honor with all my teammates, those that played before me, with me, and after me. The most special days of my days at West Point were the time I spent with my teammates. I'll always remember my teammates. I might forget who my commandant was or this or that, but I'll never forget the names of the guys that I played golf with. We were quite a team. In finishing, I'd like to recognize a few people that were very special to me. My wife, Mary, who I love very much. I wouldn't be here without her because I probably wouldn't have lived this long, Mary. My brother, Wayne, class of 70, and his lovely wife, Carol. Wayne's been my best friend for almost 70 years. My cousin, Linda, and her husband, Mike. Linda, thanks for all the trips you made to West Point during my plebe year. You made the year a lot more tolerable. I appreciate it very much. My father and his twin brother, Hal, they were both great golfers. They taught me how to play golf, and they brought my game to the level where I could be competitive at a place like West Point. So I really need to thank them, too. Unfortunately, not with us anymore. And lastly, Coach Walter Brown. Coach Walter Brown was quite a special guy. He was like a second father to me. He taught me to play hard, play by the rules, and always remain positive. And the day I graduated from West Point, I went out to West Point to the golf club to say goodbye to Coach Brown. I couldn't find him. I said, well, Steve, he's up on the first tee. So I walked up to the first tee, and there's Coach Brown sitting there on the bench with a few tears in his eyes. And I realized then how special he was and how special our relationship was. So I sat down and shed a few tears with him. I get up and left, and that would be the last time I would ever see Coach Brown. Go Army, beat Navy, beat everybody. Thank you very much.
Well done. Last but not least, an absolute star in the boxing ring for Army. The first cadet to win an intercollegiate boxing championship, a well-rounded athlete who also competed in football and baseball. From the class of 1933, Joseph Anthony Remus, represented by his son, Mr. Ernest Remus.
I want to thank everybody. We have kind of a different presentation because my father came from basically nothing. His dad was an alcoholic. His mother died at 10. He became a miner at age 14 in the northeast section of Pennsylvania, a little town called Shenandoah. Doesn't even exist anymore. He then said, that's enough of the mining stuff. I want to get in the Army. From 14 to 17, he joined the Army. I had the fortune of having a captain at Fort Myer take him under his umbrage, talk to him about some institution he never heard of since he never had a high school degree. I don't think there's anybody that I know in West Point that never had a high school degree who took the presidential exam and passed it. Now, if you look at the yearbook, the class of 1933, you'll see a picture of my dad that says, Joe in the mood. You'll see a guy flat on his stomach, and my dad going back into a neutral corner. Guess what happened, okay? He was a very humble guy. He was selected. He won the intercollegiate championship, the only one, in the light heavyweight division, and was selected to the 1932 Olympic team. The guy he beat went because my dad broke his thumb. Okay? Next year, he was undefeated, 6-0, which is amazing. And here's the most amazing part of my dad's story. By the way, I'd like to introduce my wife, Jan, and my son Rolf in the back. I don't want to fall. My wife has helped me. I'm probably one of the most gregarious people, and I'll get to that in a minute with Boo. When he called me up, I thought, oh my God, he's going to tell me, Remus, you're not allowed in West Point anymore. I had begun sending him emails and saying, why the hell can't we beat Navy, okay? And so he acquiesced, and I think he's done a great job, and I think we have the coach now that will beat Navy, okay? That's what we want. I also want to recognize Pete Dawkins, who knows me very well, because he arranged to get somebody for amnesty for my friend who got slugged. We got, what was this, some kind of an ambassador, you remember that? And that's the only way you can do it. Okay. But getting back, here is the thing that I kind of circumvented. 1932 was the Olympic year. My dad was selected to go to the Olympic trials. The guy he beat went because my dad broke his thumb. I've said that before, but here's even more amazing. After he graduated, and you're going to be ready for this one. After he graduated, a couple of promoters from New York came to Shenandoah, Pennsylvania, where my dad's sister was. And they said, where's Joe Remus? And he's at Fort Snelling. She said, we want him to get out and fight Joe Louis. Joe Louis. I don't know how many people know who Joe Louis was. Maybe the greatest boxer, heavyweight boxer in the country, okay? I'm very thankful, and my dad would be very thankful and honored, as he is, for this great, great invitation and induction into the Hall of Fame. I'm not going to say any more about Boo because he already introduced me in the last part. Army was special to my dad. His whole life was devoted to the Army. He ended up a full colonel, was commander of the 2nd Infantry Division, 5th Division in Munich, Germany. Ich spreche Deutsch. Verstehen Sie? Jawohl. Okay. Anyway, he had two fellows on his Army football team, not the football team, the boxing team, that became contenders for major championships in the United States. A fellow named Johnson and another fellow named Tachik. Boxing is probably the most grueling sport. I guess anybody who's been at West Point knows when you get in the ring for 3 minutes and then double that, or think of somebody that goes 15 rounds, you got to really be in shape. I know football is great, and there's our Heisman Trophy winner. But I think, Pete, you'll agree, right? You go to that boxing ring, you better know what you're doing. Okay, and the last but not least, I'm the class of 1960. We've been here a long time. My classmates, I have two of them that were inducted, Bob Anderson and Bill Carpenter, and of course, our great Heisman Trophy winner sitting in the back there. And Teep, why don't you stand up so people know you're here? If you would, please. I don't want to take too much more time, but I would emphasize that I'm thrilled. Boxing is a sport that is no longer an NCAA sport. I think it was discontinued in 1955 because too many people got hurt. And you will get hurt if you're in boxing. But if you think about it, football may be just as dangerous. And if you read the papers, how many quarterbacks? I know Steve Young's father used to work out with him, and he quit after 5 years, five concussions. So I don't want to prolong myself. I want to thank Boo, Bob Beretta, the superintendent. Go Army, be Navy.
All right. How about a round of applause for the Army Sports Hall of Fame class of 2016?